On January the 7th, 2001, ECW held their last pay-per-view, Guilty as Charged, from the Manhattan Center in New York City. The main event of this pay-per-view was Jerry Lynn versus Rob Van Dam in the final match of their nearly 2-year feud. That will be the focal point of today's episode of Roots of Storytelling, the new effing show. This will be the story of Jerry Lynn. And as usual, we're gonna talk about Jerry Lynn in terms of the 3-act structure of his run. We're also going to talk about the David Mamet questions in terms of how he how you built drama in the story. And we're also going to tell some stories about archetypes and the archetypal storytelling of Jerry Lynn. So let's start it from the beginning. Act 1. Let's go through the 3-act structure. Act 1 of Jerry Lynn's was Jerry Lynn is a journeyman wrestler. Jerry Lynn had already had he had wrestled in WWF. I think he has also wrestled in WCW. He had been around for like a decade already at this point. He was just a regular plain bred journeyman guy. He had never really been focused on. He had never really been pushed. By sheer happenstance, Jerry Lynn is put in the ring with Rob Van Dam. And Rob Van Dam had been in ECW since, I think, 1996. So this has been Rob Van Dam's 2 or 3 years in ECW. And he was, went from being, he was essentially a spectacular performer that they made him the television champion. He had former tag team champion. It took some time to get there. He didn't come in and set ECW on fire. But once he really got rolling, RVD was the guy in ECW. And Jerry Lynn was in a situation where he was positioned as a journeyman wrestler to go up against this superstar, Rob Van Dam. And they had their very first match at Living Dangerously, 1999, which is a bona fide classic. It's a great match. Fantastic match between these two guys. Lynn is elevated with this match. This match takes Jerry Lynn from being a regular journeyman wrestler to being a star that's, an in-ring, a star on the same level as Rob Van Dam. And, Rob Van Dam says, hey, we don't need to do the typical wrestling thing where it's, you versus me and I hate you and you hate me. You give me great matches. I want you to continue to give me great matches. So I'm challenging you to face me again at the next pay-per-view. Because Jerry Lynn had, I believe this was one of the matches where they needed 5 more minutes because Jerry Lynn was going to win the title by referee's decision, and then they decided to go to 5 more minutes. So Jerry Lynn actually wanted to pin Rob Van Dam, and then he actually loses. It was a great story, great match, and that match was very interesting. So it led to their second match at Hardcore Heaven 1999, which Jerry Lynn also lost. But he went from being a very highly respected journeyman wrestler to now they started really calling him the new effing show. And they're saying that Jerry Lynn is just as good as Rob Van Dam and is in some ways better than Rob Van Dam. So around the same time, he becomes Rob Van Dam's tag team partner, and they failed to win the tag team titles at Heatwave 99. But this is the end of the first act, is that Jerry Lynn, as a journeyman performer, is now being tied to Rob Van Dam. He had, there was no previous reaction between the two of them, but they have such amazing chemistry that they give you this great duo of matches, and then they use it as a tag team for a short time. But Jerry Lynn, the spark of Jerry Lynn starts to wane. And this brings us to Act 2. Because at the beginning of Act 2, Jerry Lynn is still struggling to maintain his level of relevance. The level he has been dubbed the new effing show. But without wrestling Rob Van Dam, who really is Jerry Lynn, right? What is Jerry Lynn if he can't wrestle Rob Van Dam? If he's not wrestling Rob Van Dam, who cares about Jerry Lynn? So you have a situation where Jerry Lynn is struggling to maintain his relevance. He chases all the titles, the world title, TV title, everything. He's continually failing. He's basically falling back into the old good hand. He's not someone who they can focus on. He's not someone that they're putting a lot of effort into. Meanwhile, Rob Van Dam is continuing to tear it up as the television champion. He is main eventing shows. He is still the whole fucking show, selling merchandise, being a huge star. And Rob Van Dam's star is going up. Jerry Lynn's star is coming down. Then, beginning of Act 3, things start to change. Rob Van Dam gets hurt. Rob Van Dam breaks his leg. Is going to miss 23 months. His 23-month title run ends because he's going to be out for 5 months. So he was world television champion for nearly 2 years. Then his 2-year title run ends because he's going to sit on the shelf for 5 months. And we get Rob Van Dam gone for all of that time. He finally loses the title. Rob Van Dam returns a little bit later on. Hardcore Heaven 2000. Jerry Lynn finally defeats Rob Van Dam. Now, he did beat Rob Van Dam in Hardcore Heaven 2000, but there was some outside help with this guy named Scotty Anton, which was absolute bullshit. Scotty Anton, for those of you who don't know, was the first person to ever get a Van Terminator, or what they call the Coast to Coast in WWE. This victory, of course, was controversial. So it was very, it wasn't very fulfilling, wasn't very satisfying for Jerry Lynn, but he did finally beat Rob Van Dam. Rob Van Dam, this was his first defeat in 2 years. Well, a solo defeat, singles match. He had not lost a singles match in nearly 2 years. So this was a big, momentous occasion. And off the back of this victory, Jerry Lynn is rocketed to the main event. Hardcore Heaven, well, Anarchy Rules 2000, October the 1st, 2000, Justin Credible loses the World Heavyweight title to Jerry Lynn. So Jerry Lynn achieved something that even Rob Van Dam had not achieved, and that is becoming the ECW World Heavyweight Champion. Now, as great as a moment it was, it only lasted for 1 month. Jerry Lynn would lose the title November the 5th to Steve Corino. And so, after Jerry Lynn loses the title, Jerry Lynn starts turning heel. Okay, his heel turn starts almost immediately after he loses the title. And this is where things get interesting. Because at this point, you would think that Jerry Lynn had finally proven himself to be the new effing show. But he had not. He was seen basically as being a good hand who finally got to the main event, won the big one, and then immediately took it off of him. This, of course, led to frustration, but he would never get that title back. He would have his last match in ECW with Rob Van Dam on January the 7th, 2001, a match in which he lost. So, we got this wonderful story here where you take these two guys, and it's a very important thing, that the Jerry Lynn story, you can't tell the story without talking about Rob Van Dam. That's the important thing. We'll get to that in a moment. But let's talk about the 4 mammoth questions. Basically, what was Jerry Lynn's desire? Throughout this entire thing, what was his desire? His desire. If you watched all of these pay-per-views, I didn't watch every single television between this time, but you can get a general sense that Jerry Lynn's desire was to change fan perception of him, right? He wanted to go from being a guy who was just a good hand to being seen as somebody who could be a main event guy. That he could win a title, especially the World TV title, to prove that he is better than Rob Van Dam, right? That was his goal. What were his obstacles? Well, the number one obstacle was Rob Van Dam himself. In order to be better than Rob Van Dam, he had to beat Rob Van Dam. And then when he finally did beat Rob Van Dam, it was because of some shady stuff involving somebody else, right? And then, fan perception is another thing. Rob Van Dam is highly skilled. He's also highly charismatic. Jerry Lynn has the skills, doesn't quite have the charisma. You also have Bill Alfonso, who is friends with Rob Van Dam, that's his manager. You have other people, The Office, Fan Perception, Justin Credible, all these different people who are obstacles to Jerry Lynn finally proving that he deserves to be in the main event. So what happens if he doesn't get it? This is also, very important too. What happens if Jerry Lynn didn't prove himself? Well, he would forever be seen as a journeyman wrestler who never really accomplished anything. he wouldn't have any legacy, other than guy who had good matches if he didn't finally achieve something and be able to prove himself. Now, living up to the moniker of being the new effing show is just one thing, because that is based off of Rob Van Dam. But he wanted to prove that he could be a star himself. And if he never actually, broke through the glass ceiling, never does become a star himself. So the fourth question is always, why now? This is a temporal question. Why did Jerry Lynn need to achieve this right now? Well, this is the first time he's ever gotten a chance at, breaking through. Like I said, this guy's a journeyman wrestler. He had been a journeyman everywhere, He had even wrestled under a mask in some places. Nobody ever cared about Jerry Lynn. This was the first place where he could be a work rate guy and still be a main event talent, and he didn't have to, be the best talker. Didn't have to be the wittiest talker. He could be just a gritty, great worker and still be considered a main event guy. ECW was perfect for him. And so that's why in 1998, 1999, he had to make it happen, because this was the only audience that would accept him. So what happens after Jerry Lynn fails to loses the world heavyweight title, and what causes the heel turn? Well, when you look back at the story, you see that Jerry Lynn started to get manipulated. He started to get tempted by Don Callis, who is he's Cyrus the Virus in ECW. And Jerry Lynn wants to, after failing to win back the world heavyweight title, he sees himself going back to being Jerry Lynn, journeyman wrestler. And he's tempted by Don Callis to actually continue. And this is where we start getting a little bit of the tragedy. The tragic hero, the temptation is there. He wants to be world champion again so badly that he's willing to go and start hanging out with the network, which was the villains at the time. So he starts hanging around with Don Callis. He took up the mantle of the whole effing show. And then he claimed that he only works main events. After spending 12 years of making stars, that he will only wrestle in main events. It's a beautiful thing that they did here with this final match, Guilty as Charged 2001, is that they did everything backwards. Right? Guilty as Charged 2001. RVD is usually the heel in these storylines because he's cocky, he's arrogant. People love him, but he's supposed to be the heel in some ways. In this match, Jerry Lynn is the heel. Also, usually Rob Van Dam has a manager, right? In Guilty as Charged, Jerry Lynn had the manager, which was Cyrus. And of course, the outcome was still the same with Rob Van Dam beating Jerry Lynn. But ultimately, this shows you that they were going for a mirror archetype here. That he was supposed to be the mirror of Rob Van Dam. That there are two guys who are very similar in style, but Lynn was before his time. In other words, Jerry Lynn worked this style. He could work this way, but it was unappreciated for years. It wasn't until ECW that his style was really appreciated. So you have RVD as this showboat. He's very flashy. He's very agile. He's very arrogant. While Jerry Lynn is very humble. Equally agile, but more of a subdued workman style guy. And then over time, you start seeing Jerry Lynn become envious of Rob Van Dam. He's envious of the opportunities that Rob is getting. He's envious of Rob's success. Rob is very popular based mostly on his style of performance, the spots that he's usually doing. And Rob's success is phenomenal. He takes the World Television Championship and he can main event pay-per-views with it. And he was the TV champion for 23 months. And even though Jerry Lynn technically achieved something that was far greater than what Rob Van Dam had done, becoming the world champion, and Rob Van Dam didn't do that. Rob Van Dam's run as the world television champion was more impressive and more laudable than Jerry Lynn's run as the world heavyweight champion. Almost some people, to be quite honest, don't even remember Jerry Lynn being the world champion in ECW. So at the end, Jerry Lynn was 1-3 or 1-4 against Rob Van Dam, and he never won another title. He never won another title. So did he succeed? Did Jerry Lynn succeed in becoming the new effing show or the whole effing show? To be quite honest, the answer is depends on your personal belief of Jerry Lynn. Now, of course, this feud is never ending. They wrestled in WWE Sunday Night Heat, Jerry Lynn versus Rob Van Dam. They also wrestled on TNA. They did the Jerry Lynn Rob Van Dam. So this is an eternal feud stretched across several years, and it's a very good story that was told without a lot of stand-in promos. It was told basically in the ring, and it was told very well through short promos that Jerry Lynn could say in like 30 or 40 seconds, and Joey Styles doing a lot of it of the commentary in the through the matches, him telling the story. And this is a great story. This is a guy who, it's almost like Rocky in a way, except for at the end, he ends up becoming so envious and so bitter because he had gotten that little bit of taste of success and then it got snatched away from him, that, he ended up turning heel and essentially falling to the wayside because he gave up, being the little engine that could, being the underdog. He refused that label. He hated it so much. He turned against it. He turned against the fans, and therefore they actually started rooting against him at the end. Instead of being the people, they were the people who were rooting for him at first. He was the underdog. They were rooting for him at first, but then at the end they were like, we're glad Rob beat him. So, so that was it. This has been very interesting. Thank you guys for your time. Like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel. You want to send an email, send it to Mr. Slade 84. You want to send cash, send it to the Cash App, which will be in the comment section below. You want to use the hashtag 3count commentaries to support the channel. Thank you very much. I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace out.